People, watch this without my mug in the frame, and then we're going to talk.
Canadians hate you fascists! You fascist bastard, Trudeau! Canadians hate your guts! You bastard! Trudeau! Fascist! Fascist bastard! Fascist! We hate you, son of a bitch! Get out of this country, you bastard!
Canadian Prime
Canadians hate you, you bastard.
You fascist bastard, Trudeau!
You fascist bastard, Trudeau.
Canadians hate your guts!
Canadians hate your guts.
You bastard!
You bastard.
Trudeau!
Trudeau.
Fascist! Fascist bastard!
Fascist bastard.
Fascist! We hate you, son of a bitch!
We hate you, you son of a beasting.
Get out of this country!
Get out of this country. How dare you?
Canadian
People, that is not a hero's welcome. Oh my goodness. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. How goes the battle? That video is making its rounds on the social medias. I can't wait to see how the CBC, Radio-Canada, Global News, all the people complaining about how politicians are getting heckled in public and how it's terrible. And, you know, they should, for some reason, they should be the privileged class that escapes the scrutiny of the public they are supposed to represent. Haven't seen how the CBC is reporting on this, if at all. We'll see. Now, I'm sitting there watching this video. There's the part of me, you know, the devil on the shoulder who says, you know, one of the prevailing comments on that video is, I'd like to buy that man a pint. Someone says we're not live on Rumble. 854 people watching. We're live. It takes a few seconds to kick in on Rumble. The prevailing comment, or at least a recurring theme, a leitmotif, a chorus, if you will, is, "Oi, I'd like to get that guy a pint." That's a terrible. That's just a terrible British accent. I was saying, the prevailing comment is, "I'd like to get that guy a pint." Now, the devil on my shoulder says, yeah, I wouldn't do it, but there's a part of me that, says this is what a lot of people are thinking. Then the angel on my other side says, if you do it like this, people are going to write you off. If you do it like the guy in Alberta who heckled Chrystia Freeland, people are going to write you off where you have an opportunity to express a political viewpoint in a respectful manner that will not that will be palatable or digestible by the general public. But unfortunately, under certain circumstances, when you go to a comedy show and the comedian is just awful, unfunny, insulting humor, making fun of the crowd, they get heckled. They get heckled, and sometimes they get heckled off stage because A, it's part of the industry, and B, when you insult your crowd, sometimes your crowd is going to yell back, heckle back. If stand-up comics can get heckled off stage for being unfunny, insulting, unoriginal, bad comedians, politicians, it comes with the job, can get heckled when they quite literally are destroying the nation that they represent. But reading the chat, yeah, that Brit man, first of all, I closed it down. I mean, how is the government going to spin this? They're going to have to portray this as, look at what happens. This ideologically motivated violent extremism, which they call it now, by the way, IMVE. They've created committees in Canada to examine ideologically motivated violent extremism that manifests itself in extreme rhetoric criticizing politicians. They're going to have to find a way to like expand that overseas. Trudeau can quite literally not go anywhere on earth, it would seem, without getting heckled by people who loathe him because of his policies. It's not like nobody's making fun of Trudeau because of the way he looks, although maybe some people are. Nobody's making fun of Trudeau for any other reason than his policies have been discriminatory, abusive, and disastrous. He has, I don't even think it's hyperbolic to say he's destroyed the nation he was supposed to be representing. He's pit Canadians against Canadians. He has come out with some of the most divisive, vitriolic, hateful rhetoric out there. He gets to go on Les 4 Semaines de Julie or La 4 Semaines de Julie and call Canadians who oppose vaccine mandates racist, misogynist extremists who take up place. Should we tolerate these people? And he thinks somehow that he should be shielded from critique, from heckling, from people who loathe him for his policies. It's not exactly how it works. But he literally can't go anywhere without getting heckled by the people. And not just that, he can't seemingly go anywhere without getting berated by the politicians themselves. Do you all remember when he went to Europe and he got lambasted by members of the European Union? Let me bring this one up. Everyone should remember this one. He got lambasted by the European Union politicians there who went, I mean, I put together a 5-minute montage of it because it was just,
Strewn with mud water and change
over the top. He gets heckled by the people wherever he goes. The only place he can find silence and solitude is either at liberal fundraising events or in the mountains. Then he goes to Europe for political reasons, and he gets lambasted by members of European Parliament.
People who were supporting a non-sanctioned movement coming under criticism. So clearly the values of democracy being despised by this individual. Let us not give someone like this any speaking time in this house of democracy.
Poštovane kolege. Let's not give him any
Dear
speaking.
colleagues, dear citizens, Prime Minister Trudeau, freedom, the right of choice, the right to freedom, the right to work. For many of us, these are basic, fundamental human rights that millions of people across Europe and across the world have given their lives. In order to defend our rights and the rights of our children, rights that we have fought for centuries. Many of us, including me, myself personally, are ready and willing to risk our own freedom and to lay down our own lives. Unfortunately, today among us, there are also those who want to trample those basic rights. Canada, once a symbol of the modern world, is under your quasi-liberal leadership, and over the past few months, it has become a symbol of violating basic human rights and civic freedoms. We have witnessed.
That'll be enough. I'll link it if anybody wants to watch it. But they say it more politely than the heckler. But I got to tell you something though. You know, the Albertan guy that heckled Chrystia Freeland and called her the B word. Something about the British accent. You call someone a fascist bastard, and it almost sounds like a compliment. The British accent can turn a heckle into a glorious, almost make it sound like a compliment. And that guy reminded me of, I keep forgetting his name, but the soccer hooligan Vinny from Eurotrip, when he's driving the bus down on the wrong side of the street in Paris and he's hurling insults. I mean, he can hurl the most outrageous insults he wants. You fascist bastard, get out of the... And it still sounds kind of almost intellectual. The beauty and the mystery of the British accent. People, let me see what's going on in the chat. First of all, let's just see if this has been, not that it matters, demonetized. Because I've noticed that the YouTube algorithm does not take kindly to things that are critical of Justin Trudeau. Still good, still good. Yeah. That link, I've shared the video in locals of the heckler, shared it on Twitter. We'll see what the response is going to be from Trudeau and his ilk. It's so disrespectful. Trudeau is a benevolent dictator. In his own mind, by the way, when he sees people reacting like this, it has to confirm his own benevolent dictatorship. It now confirms to him, oh, these people are so savage. They don't understand I'm doing this for their own good. I protect them. I've got their back. I step up, shut them down, jab them up, lock their kids up. I'm doing it for their own good. But this rabble, they don't even understand it. They lash out like animals. Oh, it just shows that we need more paternalistic government. And speaking of paternalistic government, people, one of the subject matters that we're going to discuss today, out of this world, details will come in, but there's already been an update. A Vancouver mother. There was an Amber Alert put out in Vancouver for the mother of a child who, as far as I understand the story, as of now, did not lose custody of her child, had lawful custody, I believe, had lawful rights, custodial rights of her child. Amber Alert put out, and I immediately read the story in, I believe it was the CBC. I immediately read the story and say, oh, Amber Alert. Oh, my immediate reflex must be a bad divorce. One of the parents who didn't have custody or didn't have visitation rights, didn't, kidnap the kid or didn't give the kid back in time. But then I read, next line. Oh, 3-year-old kid abducted from hospital. Okay, that's curious. It's not like a newborn, someone stealing a newborn because they couldn't have kids or whatever. 3-year-old kid kidnapped from a hospital, kidnapped by the mother. And I'm like, all right, immediately there has to be more to this story. I then was sent from the same person who sent me this link when I said there's got to be more to the story. And they said, yeah, sure, there is. Here's the video of the mother's side of the story, which we're going to go through. And there's been an update. The mother's been arrested. Okay. That's number one of the stories we're going to cover today. The other one, Gretchen Whitmer, as per the thumbnail. Looks like there's perks to collaborating with intelligence. One of the individuals who was allegedly involved in the kidnapping plot of Gretchen Whitmer, who pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 75 months in prison, well, seems that he's had his sentence reduced by half. We'll get there. We're probably going to get there first because it's not that long or interesting of a story. Story coming out of Canada again. A teacher at a school called Trafalgar High School in Oakville, Ontario, has been making the rounds on the interwebs, making the rounds, pun intended, because a picture was revealed of this trans teacher wearing the most ginormous prosthetic boobies with the most erect nipples you can imagine, to the point where it's so preposterous and so outlandish. I still think the story might be something of a double fakey sort of Eric Andre-like stunt. We'll see. But thus far, no. Thus far now, it's a teacher expressing their gender expression, and the school stands behind them with a biological male, apparently transitioning teacher, transitioning over the last year, we'll read the article, wearing the most outrageous, massive prosthetic boobs you can imagine. What else do we have? There's a few more stories in there. Let me see here. Hold on. Amber Alert, high school. Oh, and then we're going to talk about this sheriff, who's a sheriff in Texas who wants to investigate DeSantis for flying 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard. In this sheriff's own town, allegedly, apparently 51 migrants died in a tractor trailer under this sheriff's watch or close enough to it. No, this individual, this Texas sheriff, wants to investigate Ron DeSantis for flying 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard when apparently under the watch of this sheriff's office, 51 migrants died in a tractor trailer in Texas. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see who gets investigated for what over time. Yeah, that's it. Let's just start with. Well, first of all, actually, hold on. Let me just get over here and see how are we doing on Rumble. We are live on Rumble. Give me 1 second. Okay, good. We're live. Standard disclaimers: no election fortification advice, no medical advice, no legal advice. We might discuss some medical issues in the context of this Canadian mother story, when we get into what the reason for which her kid has been taken away from her. And Alex Jones, by the way. So summary on Alex Jones. Let's just start by summarizing what happened thus far today. This is Tuesday. There's no trial on Mondays. It's a 4-day week in the Alex Jones trial. This morning, the plaintiff's attorneys finally finished with their redirect of their second witness, a representative of Free Speech Systems and InfoWars, Ms. Paz. They spent 2.5 days in chief on this rep of InfoWars. Did they get anywhere in my humble view? No. They brought out the fact that she was a new hire brought in to represent the company, even though she didn't know anything about the company until she was brought in to represent it, presumably to give the impression that InfoWars deliberately put someone out there who could not answer questions on the company. They got her to admit that she wasn't given access to all the documents and whatever, even though it seems that plaintiffs have all the documents and information they could have ever needed to bring a case. And that Alex Jones and InfoWars marketed, made money, sold products off of their coverage of events. There was a short cross-examination of this representative, and then they finished redirect this morning. And then plaintiff's attorney brought out a witness who is not a party to the suit, not a plaintiff, not a representative, employee, or otherwise connected to the defendants. They brought out their expert witness. Now, I haven't been listening to the testimony since I went with our locals exclusive at noon. But what I heard this morning, they brought out this expert witness who trained FBI, trained at Quantico, works in online terrorism, in that this expert, his expertise is in going online, finding how terrorist organizations recruit, spread information, spread disinformation, as this expert said, as though to equate, and I'm sure some people might agree with it, but I think that would only be people who are viewing this very inaccurately, hyperbolically, as though to equate Alex Jones and InfoWars to some form of online terrorist entity, terrorist group. The expert at one point was talking about misinformation and how these entities use the internet to spread misinformation, to craft false narratives, and then actually started talking about the war in Ukraine and how people are using the internet to spread misinformation as relates to the Yahtzee issue in Ukraine. And this expert, I mean, at the beginning they said this trial is not political. This trial is not political. And yet this expert is now it wasn't hard evidence being adduced because it's not related to the file, but in introduction is coming out as to how his expertise is online surveillance of terrorism, how they spread the information, how they recruit, and then talking about misinformation on the Yahtzee issue in Ukraine, and says how people have been using this information to craft a false narrative about Ukraine because it's not true. It's been thoroughly debunked. It doesn't even survive scrutiny, this expert says, because the president of the Ukraine is of Jewish origin, he said. And so this expert just testified on a totally political issue, en passant, and made a statement which seems to be utterly contradicted by mainstream media itself. And I'm going to pull up the search results because we're not going to really get into it. Just to pull up the search results, when you go to Google, there were reports, of the Yahtzee problem in Ukraine that go back 8 years. Here's one by BBC Newsnight: neo-Nazi threat in New Ukraine. BBC Newsnight's Gabriel Gatehouse investigates the links between the new Ukrainian government and neo-Nazis. BBC 8 years ago. There was another one: inside a white supremacist militia in Ukraine, from Time Magazine, 1.8 million views 1 year ago. And it goes on. I'm going to skip it. It goes on. MSM had been covering this issue 4 years, over the last years, But then this expert comes in a case about defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, puts out a sound clip, a sound bite about how this is a false narrative, debunked at first glance because the President Zelensky is of Jewish origins. Okay. That's basically all we got to. And then the expert basically gets into the subject matter of his expertise as an expert witness, which is how they make money online, how people make money online through clicks, through generating traffic, etc. So nothing thoroughly interesting that we need to do a full day live stream. When Jones comes up, we'll talk about it, and we'll do a live stream on that for sure when Jones testifies. But thus far, it's going to go on for nearly a month. It's not going to be something that we're going to sit there and watch day in and day out. If you want to watch it without commentary, but I'm going to be following it and giving updates as things go along. Okay, with that said, let me just go back here and get the article that I was about to bring up. Ty Garbin. This is, you'll recall, we had been covering the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot from the very beginning. And from the beginning, some of us thought, after the facts started coming out, that this could have looked potentially like a little bit maybe of entrapment, something of a setup. The timing was very convenient for this plot, given the presidential election. The facts around it were very much interesting. The nature of the defendants was very much interesting. People who potentially never had the means or the wherewithal to carry out that which they were being accused of having plotted. Then it became known throughout the course of the prosecution, throughout the course of the trial, that there were more informants and FBI agents involved in foiling this plot than actual defendants to the plot, which led some people to question whether or not these victims were plotting the plot or whether or not it was the FBI and the informants that were actually plotting the plot to foil the plot. Then during trial, it came out that some of these informants, there were almost more informants and agents than defendants. Some of them were getting paid, and handsomely, like $60,000 a year, making more from being informants than from their their normal job. Then it became known that some of the informants were giving gift cards to some of the defendants so that they could get the weapons that they apparently never had the means to get in the first place. Then it became known that some of the FBI agents were getting arrested for their own legal troubles. Some of the informants were getting indicted for unlawful gun possession charges. Then it became known that some of the FBI agents were texting their informants to delete some of the messages between the two of them. Then it turned out that 2 of the 4 defendants in the first trial were acquitted after having successfully raised the defense of entrapment. The other 2 defendants there was a hung trial. And there was a, why can't I get my, there was a retrial for the 2 defendants that were not convicted. And after some important jury selection, the 2 defendants were convicted after their retrial, in which evidence was adduced above and beyond everything else that we just talked about, which was known publicly, but not necessarily to the same jury. In the retrial, it became known that some of the FBI informants were women who were sharing hotel rooms with some of the defendants, smoking weed with them, recording them at all times, recording their delusional fantasies while under the influence of drugs that were provided to them by the FBI, convicted. Okay. Ty Garbin was one of the individuals who pleaded guilty and then agreed to testify in the first trial. And he was sentenced for his cooperation to 75 months in jail. Well, it seems that after the conviction of 2 of the 4, his sentence was halved. If only he had gotten a full conviction of all 4, he might have been let out of jail, yesterday. But let's check this out. Man in plot to kidnap Michigan governor has sentence reduced. Ty Garbin, one of 13 men arrested October 2020, yada, yada, yada. A federal judge on Friday reduced the sentence of a man who pleaded guilty to participating in a foiled plot to kidnap Michigan's governor after his testimony helped convict the ringleaders last month. It's amazing. It's stunning. It almost might confirm some theories that people had where he's going to do 30 months. We'll see how much he actually does and whether or not. Whatever. Ty Garbin, 26, was sentenced to 30 months in prison, less than half of the 75 months he was given in August. Garbin's testimony helped the U.S. government win convictions last month of two men for leading the plan to abduct Governor Whitmer from her vacation home, yada, yada, yada. A U.S. District Judge Robert Jonker in Grand Rapids cut the sentence in light of the substantial assistance. Didn't cut it. I thought he helped during the first trial. If I'm wrong about that, I'll correct myself. But I thought he had helped during the first trial. I guess it's not substantial assistance. It's substantial success. They got the conviction. FBI can save face. Whitmer can save face. And now this guy can, get the favor he thought he was going to get the first time when he helped, but was sentenced to 75 months in prison. Garbin's attorney petitioned for the resentencing and prosecutors agreed. Garbin testified against Adam Fox and Barry Croft, who were found guilty of kidnapping conspiracy and other charges in an August retrial after a jury failed to reach a verdict in April. 2 other men were released. So we got into all that. I just want to see if he testified. Garbin, who was arrested in October 2020, was among 13 men charged with state and federal crimes. 7 defendants are facing charges in state court. I'm certain he testified as well in the first trial, and I guess he didn't. It wasn't successful. So you get the carrot after you've. I'm going to mangle that expression. You get the favor only if you get the results. If only all 4 had been convicted, he would have been resentenced to time served. Let me see here. Just got off Nate the lawyer's Boozy Buck stream. You've been looking at that, Viva. I know what's going on, man. Okay. If anybody doesn't know about the Boozy versus Brody beef, the Boozy Brody beef, some shit has hit the fan on Twitter and the social media. This guy named Chris, what's his first name? Chris Boozy, the creator of this thing called Bot Sentinel, which it rates people's Twitter feeds as, innocuous to problematic with 4 variations in between. The dude makes it his business to deplatform people, exact social media wrath against people, financial social media repercussions. He goes after accounts, and it seems to be highly motivated and potentially conflicted of interests in that it goes after accounts that criticize Amber Heard, and apparently this individual was hired, paid for, and did not disclose that this was the case by the Amber Heard team. Brody and a bunch of others called him out, and then also found out some interesting legal history about this individual, Boozy. Questionable bankruptcy claims, unpaid rent, and there has been a Twitter war, a social media beef a-brewing. Apparently, Boozy got Brody suspended from Twitter for 72 hours for targeted harassment because apparently Brody referred to Boozy as a biatch in a tweet. And now Brody they've coined a term, Boozy Bucks, and people are giving super chats out the wazoo to Nate Brody. It's the internet is a fascinating environment from time to time. Bot Sentinel is also a bot troll farm, no doubt. I've been following it, but man, that's not my fight at this point in time. And Nate is more than capable, quite clearly more than capable of taking care of himself. And also, if you make it your business to go after people and destroy their lives and livelihoods and get them penalized on social media, you ideally should have a clean history yourself. And you should also bear in mind that you're not the smartest person in the room. There are smarter people out there who, if you have dirt and relevant dirt in your history, someone's going to find it. And lo and behold, it might actually serve to discredit everything that you have, been building yourself. Rackets is getting in. I think I do. Anyways, I don't jump into internet drama just for the sake of it. If it happens, it happens. And it's been happening to. Okay. By the way, people, let's move it on over to Rumble. 30 seconds. The link is in the chat. I'll put it right here. Let's go take this party where we can talk about massive prosthetic boobies without having to worry about YouTube censorship. Because like Tim Pool astutely pointed out, the very image of the massive prosthetic boobies with and I'm saying erect nipples because that's what they are, and that's technically and scientifically how you refer to it. YouTube flags it as adult content for good reason. I made a joke that you have something like that in a movie, PG-13 right away. Just me, Nicole, have you seen the video of Trudeau singing Bohemian Rhapsody the night before the Queen's funeral? Was it not the night before, or was it the night after? Or was it the night of? We're going to watch. People, mosey on over to Rumble. We're going to watch that video as a welcome to everybody who comes on over. So let's just take that. Boozy bucks. I mean, it's just the internet it's glorious at times. And the harder Boozy goes after Brody, first of all, the more Brody actually presents material which is damn relevant and damn incriminating. And I mean that in the actual literal sense. And also the more it builds up Nate Brody's social media profile. And from a cynical perspective, yeah, dude, he's getting Boozy bucks. They've made a term now. And it's not going to end well for Boozy, because he's going to do more. He's going to do more for exposing himself than for exposing anybody else. All right, people, that is it. We are winding it down on the YouTubes in 3, 2,